Hi, so I want to talk about something that means quite a lot to me. And what it is it's a movie from about 5 years ago called There Will Be Blood. It's by Paul Thomas Anderson. And to me, it means a lot to me because there's a lot I feel I can relate to in that film. But also, it's kind of because of the discussions that came out of it. I remember, I remember when I watched it and I saw it at the cinema. Every time I spoke to anybody about it, what would always come up would be these overarching themes of capitalism and the idea of greed and the fact that money corrupts and power corrupts. And I always thought that this was a really weird analysis of the movie because it's not what I got out of it at all. To me, it seemed more about isolation. It seemed to be more about loneliness and misunderstanding. And to me, things like capitalism, things like greed, I think they're part of the story, but they're only really peripheral to the characters. They're only mostly sets for them. I mean, this is a film that is definitely a character study. This is something where the plot is definitely driven by characters. And to be honest, I don't think many movies are worth it unless they are. But it what I find about the film that's most important is the main character, Daniel Plainview, who I suppose is a villain to some. But to me, he's more of an anti-hero. And the reason I find him so endearing is because on a certain level, I feel like I can relate to him. But also, I feel like everybody can. I think that he's a character that everybody has a little bit of inside them. And what I want to talk about specifically is a scene that particularly pleases me. And there's two reasons for this. First of all is because it's quite an emotional scene. And second of all, it's because I feel that this is a scene that, just in case there's any confusion with the viewer, it spells out what the movie is about in black and white. And this is what baffled me about any conversations I would have with people about this, because it was almost like they couldn't see the wood for the trees. It's like they just brought it out there on a silver platter. It's like Anderson just said, "Here, this is what this movie's about. I'm telling you, do with it what you want." And it was just completely ignored. And this, to me, is just nuts. So it's a scene when he's around a campfire with the man who he believes is his brother. And he's basically going on a monologue about how he kind of hates the world. He's saying he has a competition in him. He doesn't want anyone else to succeed even. And he hates most people. And this is like the line that really does it. He says he wants to earn so much money so he can just get away from everyone. And it's literally like, that's what it is. It's not materialism. It's not want. It's not filling the void with stuff. It's to get away. It's this feeling of isolation. This feeling of a lack of understanding. And unfortunately, the only boundary between being an island is cash. And it's a means to an end, basically. And this is something that I never really understood why nobody got, why people ignore it, because to me, it's such a profoundly honest scene. I mean, the man he's talking to is a man who he believes is his brother. And it's not as if he's saying it in order to cover up the fact that he's a rampant capitalist whose needs whose wants exceed his needs. This is an incredibly honest scene, even if the subject matter is, a little morally ambiguous. And this is what I mean. He's a very complex character. And it's strange because the loneliness is really inherent here. Because this is a man who he believes to be his brother. This is a man who we would usually hate. And I think the reason why he says he hates the world and he hates most people is because they aren't himself. I mean, he's a destructive character. He's very dysfunctional. And the reason that he can open up to a brother is because he feels misunderstood. But his brother is blood. They are the same. When he talks about his hatred, he says, if it's in me, it's in you. And because he is the same, it means he can relate. It means that he's likable. It means that he can understand him. Because they're the same. And of course, like, this is a relationship that ends in murder when he finds out that he's not actually his brother. And this isn't kind of like a revenge. It's not like you lied to me, so I killed you. It's not like you took all my money and you spent it on booze and hookers, which he does. But it's more about the fact that this betrayal hurts especially because he realizes he really is alone. He is absolutely by himself. That this one person, the one person in the whole world that could have understood him, cannot, because he is not him. And it's this strange narcissism that just drives the character and makes him so interesting. He has a similar relationship with his adopted son. Early in the story, one of his workers dies and he picks up the kid and he raises him as his own. He tells everyone he's his own kid. And it's kind of implied in the movie by the way he acts, by the way he's questioned by people, that he only picked up this kid in order to have a sweet face to buy land with, so he'd look respectable in front of church-going folk. But that's not true at all. To me, it's yet another step of this need for a family, this need for this family of self, of this acceptance, of this understanding. It's like he can be reborn within his son. And even though he's not his flesh and blood, from an early age, he can bring him up as himself. He can have a little mini-me trotting around behind him, helping him to get oil deals, helping him to get to that house in the hills somewhere where he doesn't have to talk to anybody. And of course, I mean, this is a relationship that ends badly too, because the guy's so self-destructive. It's, at one point in the story, the kid is quite suspicious of the brother, and so he basically attacks him. And that attack on the brother is not an attack on the brother, it's an attack on Plainview. Because attack on the brother is an attack on the self. And it's at this point that I really think that the downward spiral starts. Because he realizes that if he can't trust the self, who is his child, who is essentially himself, then he really can't trust anybody. And I suppose that's why the brother kind of takes precedence at that point, because the brother is, as far as he knows, blood, but the child is not. And since this other, who he was trying to pass off as the self, betrays him, and he loses trust in him, he starts to lose trust in all of humanity and all the others. And if he banishes him. He sends him off to private school. He's like, yeah, piss off, kid. And then, of course, the brother takes precedent. But then again, once he kills the brother, he brings the kid back because he needs that companionship. He needs that love. And he's the next best thing. It's all he's got. And, of course, this relationship ultimately ends at the end of the movie when the child is an adult and he's leaving. He says he wants to go and create his own oil company. And this is when he's kind of like a twisted wreck at this point. He obviously became successful a while ago. He obviously got his dream of getting away from everyone, and it sent him even crazier. He's a wreck of a man. He's a complete alcoholic. And when the son leaves, this is the point where he decides to tell the son that he's not really his son. He's not his flesh and blood. He says, there's none of me in you. Because why not? Because he's leaving anyway, so why keep up the charade? He feels like he's lost a son. He's been left alone. And yet this cycle continues. This is a man who needs a family of self. And this is exactly why I don't think this film's about capitalism, why it's not about greed. I mean, this guy's not Gordon fucking Gekko, you know? He needs a family. He needs someone to share these riches with, whilst he needs to get away from everyone else. He needs someone to love and to love him. And if even though he has to instill himself onto that in order to happen, I mean, it's a vain dream, and of course it fails because of that vanity. But all of these things, all his actions, they don't add up to just avarice. I mean, for God's sake, I mean, if this film is not a character study, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's a Paul Thomas Anderson film. I mean, recurring themes in pretty much all his movies are loneliness, isolation, obsession, dysfunctional figures. They rarely go into the political. In fact, pretty much like the only people who even represent capitalists in this film are Standard Oil, who are pretty much like his kind of nemesis in about 2 scenes in the whole film. I mean, this is the only guy in the whole history of the planet, and this is impressive. This is the only guy in the whole history of the planet who has actually managed to make an Adam Sandler film that was good. And no one's managed it since. I mean, really? I mean, the guy takes Adam fucking Sandler and puts him in a good movie. I mean, Punch Drunk Love is practically going with the same themes as this. Another isolated, misunderstood, lonely character who's incredibly dysfunctional and just kind of like needs this love but seems to push everyone away. I mean, it's a similar thing. It's, I mean, yeah. It's a movie about an island, about becoming an island and the dangers of doing it. And to me, capitalism, the gain of capital, wealth, land, it is most certainly not a motivation in this character. And if it's not a motivation in the character, it's not a motivation in the film. I mean, it's about the dark side of the human soul. It's about the darkness that we can all plunge into if we let it happen. And I suppose maybe if you did want to like branch it out to society, you could say that isolation is a common part of the society we live in. But it's definitely not about capitalism. It's definitely not about greed. Because the only greedy people in this movie are Standard Oil. And he absolutely hates that shit. And to me, I think it's like saying Heart of Darkness is just about colonialism and the scramble for Africa, which is just fucking ridiculous. And to me, just like whitewashing over everything in a film like this and then just applying it to this like vessel for which to put on a social conscience, it's quite astonishing, really. And I suppose it was a convenient time to attach it to oil politics, but I think there's a bit of him in all of us. I think he's the extreme, and I think that is why this is interesting, because it's a human condition. And sure, these themes are there, themes of greed are there, but I don't think it's the most interesting thing you can get out of this film. And it's certainly not why the character exists. I think the most interesting thing you can get out of this is a character study. I'm done.